The following film illustrates the use of the Symphonie Aqua compact system. For a detailed step-by-step introduction, please refer to the user's manual. The compact system is designed with mobility in mind, so it can be easily disassembled and transported to any location. Make sure the system is placed on an even and dry floor, and you have access to clear water. The system comes with a carrying bag. The bag contains a casting bag for solid cups in different diameters. A hose set. A pump lever. Casting lube. And 4 legs. 2 of them with wheels. And the vector tower. The Symphonie Aqua compact housing and a grip handle. Set the grip handle so that a secure and comfortable standing position is possible for the patient. Connect the lever for the pump to the coupling provided directly on the gauge panel. There are 2 possibilities for filling the system with water. On the upper side of the gauge panel, find the opening in which you can fill in water. Make sure to have clean water and fill until the filling level has been reached. In order to fill the system with the aid of the hand pump, connect the hose to the hose coupling on the gauge panel side of the system. Set the lever to empty an external circuit. Now you can pump fresh water into the outer tank from a pail, sink, or other water source. Using the hand pump, now completely pump the water from the outer tank into the pressure tank with the gauge settings internal tank and fill. This procedure requires approximately 40 pumping movements. Fill until the air from the pressure tank has completely escaped from the gauge panel opening. Then, tightly close the ventilation screw. Next, empty the pressure tank so you can easily place the vector tower, setting the gauge to internal tank and empty. In order to make the patient's impression procedure as comfortable as possible, you can adjust the height of the system. An indication for the optimal height is the upper side of the thigh while the leg is bent at 90 degrees. The levelers can be easily mounted by one-sided tipping. The castor wheels must be mounted on the side of the gauge panel. Consequently, the system can be more easily positioned during the impression procedure. Determine the optimal pressure with the help of the Symphonie Aqua VC app. For this, you need the circumference below the patella at the MPT height, without liner on the skin. The condition of the connective tissue, soft, medium or hard, as well as the athleticism of the patient, where 1 stands for unathletic and 4 for athletic. You can download the Symphonie VC app using the QR code. It is available in the App Store and Google Play Store. Choose the solid cup according to the size of the distal end of the residual limb. The residual limb must not come in contact with the rim of the solid cup. If a solid cup that is too large is chosen, there is too much space between the residual limb and membrane. Choose the size of the distal end bearing cushion that fits the solid cup. Next, determine the correct height in the system, and then measure the length from the distal end of the residual limb to the desired socket height, and calculate the difference in regard to the entire length of the height compensating disc. In our case, the system height is 480 mm. The measured likely socket length is 220 mm, which results in a vector tower height of 480 minus 220 equals 260 mm. The distal end cap, height compensating discs and solid cup including the foam cushion are screwed together to the calculated length and carefully placed into the empty pressure tank. Make sure the membrane is completely open before placing the vector tower in the pressure tank. Set the gauge to fill, and pump water into the pressure tank until the membrane lies at the level of the foam cushion. This saves time during the plaster impression. Check the desired socket height again with the vector tower, the distal end cap and the foam cushion inserted. In our case, the reading should be 220 mm. To protect the Symphonie Aqua membrane from plaster residues, apply a liberal amount of Symphonie Aqua casing lube. For socket systems which use a liner for attaching the prosthesis, it can be advantageous to carry out the impression with the corresponding liner. If applicable, protect the textile outer fiber of the liner with a thin film like a cling film. Mark the desired plaster height on the residual limb as a reference point for the plaster impression. Wrap the residual limb with wet plaster bandages, alternating between clockwise and counterclockwise directions. Be sure to close the distal end. the entire residual limb. Afterwards, coat the plaster smoothly. To protect the system from impurity, pull a Symphonie Aqua casting bag over the fresh plaster. Using the lever, activate the pump in order to pump the water from the outer tank to the inner tank. Levers on the gauge panel must be set to internal circuit and fill. In a standing position, the patient can now place his or her residual limb in the middle of the cylinder opening, so that there is light contact with the distal bearing cushion. The inner tank is now filled further, until the patient feels a slight pressure. As of approximately 400 millibar, be sure that the patient's residual limb now statically bears the load completely, or as well as possible. Increase the pressure until you reach the calculated pressure. During the impression process, pressure should be kept constant. Depending on the type of the plaster dressings applied, the standard setting time is spent in a completely burdened and static state. After the plaster dressing has hardened, set the levers to internal circuit and empty. The patient reduces the load on the amputated side. In order to avoid sinking deeper into the distal bearing cushion, the patient slowly pulls the residual limb out of the system as the water pressure decreases. The patient can now sit down and you can remove the film. After which the plaster impression is removed, by slowly pulling it from the residual limb. Empty the inner tank completely and remove the height compensation components. Water can be released from the outer tank by means of the drain plug. Open the draining screw, and the tank will release almost all water from the outer tank. Alternatively, set the levers to external circuit and fill, and use the hose to pump out the water from the external tank. We recommend to change the water every week, and the membrane every 9 months. For further information, please refer to the user's manual or contact us at support@romaidis.de.